We are back online despite difficulties. In the last episode, the fox cornered the rat in a barricaded ship's galley. The vote has settled on him leaving her. Why escalate with the crazy rat if he doesn't have to? Then again, I got the only vote again. I could get used to this. At any rate, on with the story. Joseph breathed deep to calm himself. He did not want to let his fox instincts to chase get the better of him any further than they already had. Yes, they needed intel, but this rat was not worth pursuing into the unknown regions of the ship. Alright, you can calm down without me. Just don't blame me if you get hurt. I'd advise you to stay put, but you're obviously not in the listening mood, Joseph said.
Yeah, that's right, Foxboy. Go be a good pet to the humans,
Izzy retorted.
I don't need your help.
With that, the fox turned and proceeded to make his way towards the stairwell. Good day and good luck. I think you're gonna need it. Izzy heard his footsteps recede into the distance, light but determined. She did not need him. She'd already been on the ship for over a year as part of the science team. She could handle herself, considering the things she'd already seen in this strange place. When she got home, surely she would finally escape her mother's shadow with all the new discoveries she made in this strange new place, she thought as she further explored the galley. This proved more difficult the further away Joseph got. The light was gone with the fox. The first thing she fumbled for was a light switch. There was a heavy layer of ash she could feel over everything in the room she touched. Definitely not good for her lungs. She would have to find a respirator soon, but those should be in boxes along the wall as emergency equipment, which was already opened and used as she could smell the faint charring, likely the cause of the ash, and there was no respirator in sight. Izzy did not want to admit she may have miscalculated, but it was looking more and more like it. Her focus to get away now was drifting to thoughts of long-term survival. Shelter, water, food, probably in that order. She was not sure she wanted to be found, especially if the fox and his friends came looking for her again. Then again, if they were being honest with her, she could swallow her pride. An apology might help her figure out who these people were. But her pride was rather tough to swallow. Her stomach also gurgled a little bit. Cryosleep had a side effect of making one rather hungry when they woke up. Luckily, she was in the galley. She should be able to scrounge something. Even if the galley was as decrepit as it felt, there should be something edible in the cans. She found one with the seal intact, and shortly thereafter, a can opener. What was inside after she broke the seal made the room smell like rotten vomit that had sat in the sun for 2 days. She may not be picky, but she also was not that desperate. She continued to rummage around and stumbled into the door to the galley freezer. It still felt cold. Good. Something was supplying it with power. That meant she wouldn't be overwhelmed with a wall of stench when she opened it. Hopefully something even edible was inside. The wall of biting cold air washed over her like a glacial wave as she cracked the door. The freezer-burned corpse inside told a different story to what she had thought. After the initial wave of nausea and retching had passed, she immediately backed out and slammed the door shut with a resounding crash. Perhaps hiding in the freezer was not the best option in this case. She did not want to get locked in like that poor crew member. She couldn't even tell what species they were anymore, or who they were for that matter. Izzy leaned up against the reclosed freezer door. She could hear the footsteps of the fox faintly in the distance, as he headed back to the place he had come from. She could also hear other sounds of movement coming from the opposite direction, a random banging sound interspersed with muffled yelling and mechanical noises. Neither option was appealing to her at the moment, to be honest. Back in the hidden laboratory, Dr. Alexander Steele still had his scalpel in his shoulder, but he was working on fixing that.
Okay. Further tests I've run indicate there are no airborne pathogens, at least that I should be particularly concerned about. There are always pathogens.
Ah,
Olga grunted.
now hold still and let me pat your suit.
Steele sighed. I need to examine the wound. For all the things it can do, treat wounds is not one of them.
Yet. Next iteration of the coat might work on that.
Next what?
Olga frowned.
Version. Revision. Next one I make.
Dr. Steele said.
It would help if I could waive certain restrictions I agreed to.
I am thinking I do not want to know.
Olga said.
But I want to know.
Well, you were going to hear anyway, Dr. Steele said. Because if some of my other results are right, that might be very relevant in the next few hours. Steele winced a little as the blade twisted when he handed Olga a tablet. It was displaying a spectrograph.
Spectrograph?
Olga frowned, familiar with them as a starship pilot.
Are we looking at stars now?
No, Steele said, though I grant you, it's similar. This is a chemical analysis of the dust in this room. You will note the pattern. This specifically indicates the chemicals present. The pattern is very telling, at least to me. I used to design nanotechnology. These indicate the presence of nanobots, but I can't confirm that. Or at the very least, remains of a nanobot swarm.
Nanobots are normal, Doctor. Part of medicine. Here in Center Space. This is not news.
Then explain how so many are present on the ship. From a time period before nanobots were practical, they might have been able to make the polymers, but some of these compounds indicate advanced processing capability as well, something that has only recently been cracked, partially thanks to yours truly. Olga did not have a good answer for that. The polar bear grunted and let Steele continue. No, what I think is that the poor souls on this ship picked up something in their center space-wide collectathon, Steele said. And it's likely we'll be able to find out exactly what it is in this laboratory. With this, Dr. Steele removed the scalpel, placing it on the table. I think it's time to explore the warehouse next door.
After you get bandage on that.
Olga said, crossing her arms. Yes. Dr. Steele set about the laborious task of taking off the spacesuit and the clothes he had on underneath it. It is then that Olga caught sight of the faintly glowing tattoos covering Steele's shoulder.
Interesting. I would not have pegged you for tattoos, sir.
I didn't exactly get these by choice, Steele grunted as he finally slapped a medi patch on the wound. No, I'd prefer not to elaborate on them. Yet, if ever.
Is that another one of your restrictions?
Self-imposed. Steele began to replace his clothes while Olga patched the suit hole. He grinned a little, despite himself. But enough about that. The two of us have a reliquary to raid. It was at that moment the door let out a metallic shriek as Joseph stepped back through it. I hope you weren't planning on leaving without telling me. Is Heidi back yet? On the lower deck. Heidi was not back yet. Rather, a few decks down, Heidi felt the impact with the wall or floor. She was not sure which. Strained her ribs. The chaotic-looking mass of metal, plastic, and circuits on top of her did not help matters. Heidi tried to wiggle free, but the weight and entangling wires proved too much to deal with. A bright light shone directly into her eyes. A monotone voice then spoke, grating at her ears as though she were listening through steel wool.
Test result negative. Neutral protocols engaged. Wait, what?
Heidi said, as the weight lifted. She found she was still restrained, however. Somehow this, whatever it was, had wrapped her up in scrap wires. It did not look like these were manufactured for the purpose of restraint, at least as far as she could tell in the strobing light.
You are being restrained in order to accomplish the primary objective.
Heidi's head was still swimming from the strobe of her flashlight. It was still spinning back in the null-gravity area.
Hold on. What is the primary objective here? Did I miss a memo?
You are not the primary objective. Potentially relevant.
Thank you?
Heidi ventured.
Irrelevant statement. Ignored.
The mound of wires and servos turned away from Heidi.
Hey, could you at least untie me?
Heidi shouted.
Are you a threat to the primary objective?
Its attention was suddenly laser-focused on Heidi once more. Its eyes starting to glow. A pair of lights beneath the wires.
I'm not a threat to anyone. I'm search and rescue, Heidi said, exasperated. whole reason I'm here is to help.
That remains to be seen.
It said. Its eyes glowed once more. Beneath the nest of wires, Heidi thought she saw the form of a person moving around, clearly disturbed. It was constantly shifting and making the wires dance almost, but it was a great deal of noise as well. She thought she caught the glimpse of a tail, so perhaps an anth was underneath all that? But anth eyes don't just glow for no reason.
Are you an anth?
Heidi ventured tentatively.
This is an anth vessel from the homeworld.
Irrelevant statement. Ignored.
Can I at least have a name?
Heidi said.
Something better than saying, "Hey, you!"
Relevant. Designation is Cat CH-22.101 Spade.
Huh. That's something.
Heidi said, not quite sure how to handle that.
Can I just call you Spade for now?
Acceptable.
Oh, yes. There are multiple choices. However, before we get to your potential choices, I have an item of business with you as the audience. I love giving you as much choice as possible. However, sometimes the choices I present in the format that I have in the past get in my way of producing content and yours in receiving content. I'm going to try an experiment. You will get a choice as per usual after this episode. From here on, though, there may be a slight change in format for the upcoming series of episodes. I will now no longer give you a choice at the end of every one. I shall more fully explore the consequences of those choices. Only truly when a decision point comes along that matters will I bother you with a choice. Which brings us to your options for the upcoming series of episodes. Do we want to cover what happens to the rat? Do we want to see the strange robot and Heidi interact more? Or do we want to see Dr. Steele, Olga, and Joseph go on a miniature heist, or possibly look for Heidi? Polling protocols have also been updated, so you may now go to my Twitter page and participate in the poll there. This should be more reliable than my past efforts. Well, my Twitter handle is RobsonCarr, RobsonCarr1. That's the numeral 1. Feel free to leave a comment or interact with the video in some way too. At any rate, I bid you a good day, until we meet again.